No, that's not possible. Daniel's voice barely rose above a whisper, but the silent courtroom heard him. For 2 days, my ex-husband had portrayed me as an unstable, broken veteran whose combat injuries made her unfit to raise our son. His expensive attorney stood confidently beside him, while Daniel's mistress, now his wife, watched from the gallery with folded arms and a smug expression. Then Judge Eleanor Watkins opened my military file. She adjusted her glasses, turned a few pages, and read one sentence. That was all it took. The color drained from Daniel's face as if every drop of blood had left him at once. No, he whispered again. That's not possible. The judge looked up slowly. It appears this court has been given an incomplete picture. For the first time in nearly 10 years, Daniel was afraid not of me, but of the truth. I had never hidden it. He had simply never cared enough to ask. 9 years earlier, I had not returned from my final deployment looking like a hero. I came home in pieces. Our flight landed at Pope Army Airfield outside Fayetteville, North Carolina, on a gray October afternoon. Medication blurred the landing, but I remember antiseptic, the heavy braces around my left leg, and the pain in my pelvis and ribs whenever I breathed. Through the window, North Carolina looked impossibly green after months overseas. I believed I was finally coming home to my husband and baby. Noah was 3 months old. I had kissed his tiny forehead before leaving for what should have been a short deployment. Then our convoy was attacked during a humanitarian evacuation. I pulled 2 young soldiers from a burning vehicle before another explosion threw me across the road. My ribs were broken, my pelvis shattered, and my left knee severely damaged. Doctors said I would walk again after months of rehabilitation. I believed my family would face it together. I was wrong. Daniel met me at Walter Reed with flowers, probably because people expected him to. He smiled for photographs, held my hand while nurses watched, and kissed my forehead. I thought I was lucky. I did not know he had already decided to leave. 2 days later, after my transfer closer to home, he entered my hospital room with a manila envelope. He did not sit, ask about therapy, or ask what I needed. He placed it on my blanket. I've already signed everything. I frowned at him. What is it? The divorce papers. For a moment, I honestly believed the medication was making me hallucinate. What? I can't do this anymore, Emma. I stared at him. We have a baby. I know. I'm still in the hospital. I know. I can't even stand. He looked away, and then he said the words I would never forget. I didn't marry someone I'd have to spend the rest of my life taking care of. The room went silent. I searched his face for guilt or hesitation and found none. What about Noah? I'll send child support. You haven't even held him this week. Daniel gestured toward my wheelchair, my braces, and my broken body. He'll be better off without all this. For years I wondered whether he regretted those words. Eventually I accepted that he had meant them. 3 days after my discharge, Michael, my older brother, brought me home. Daniel's closet was empty. Half the furniture and all the family photographs were gone. A folder from his attorney waited on the kitchen counter. That afternoon, my neighbor crossed the street with a casserole and hesitated at my door. I wasn't sure anyone had told you. Told me what? I saw Daniel yesterday. He was moving into a condo downtown. She paused. He wasn't alone. Somehow, I already knew. A week later, another military spouse sent me a photograph taken at a restaurant. Daniel was laughing and holding hands with the coworker he had always dismissed as just a friend. The timestamp was from before my deployment ended, perhaps before it began. His affair had not started after my injuries. My injuries merely made it easier for him to stop pretending. My mornings became pain medication, physical therapy, and learning to move from bed to wheelchair without dropping Noah. I lifted him while my ribs screamed and moved through a body that no longer felt like mine. One day, my VA therapist asked what frightened me most. My own answer surprised me, that my son will grow up believing his father left because of me. She studied me for a long moment and said, "Children don't remember who walked away. They remember who stayed." Her words carried me through the darkest nights. Sometimes I slept sitting up because lying down hurt too much. Other nights, Noah cried with colic while I shuffled through the hallway on a walker, praying my leg would hold until he slept. I wanted to quit more than once. I even wondered whether Daniel had been right. Then Noah would wrap his tiny fingers around mine, giving me another reason to stand. Every painful step became a promise that my son would always have someone fighting for him. I had survived one battlefield. Now I had another war to win. Time does not heal every wound. It gives us chances to decide what to do with them. My recovery was measured in small victories, standing without being caught, crossing the living room with only a cane, and lifting Noah from his crib without crying from rib pain. No one applauded or pinned a ribbon on me, but those victories mattered more than any medal. Weekdays began before sunrise. Noah woke around 5:30, cheerful before I was ready. I gripped the nightstand until my left leg steadied beneath me. The doctors were right. I walked again, though never the same. Cold exposed every fracture, and rain made my knee ache. Still, I walked. After I fed Noah, Michael usually stopped by before work. "You good?" he asked every morning. "I'm good." "You sure?" "No." It became our running joke. Michael laughed, kissed Noah, fixed whatever needed fixing, and left without making me feel like a burden. He never treated me as Daniel had. My parents lived nearly 2,000 miles away in Arizona, but called every evening. Mom sent care packages. Dad read bedtime stories by video until Noah recognized his voice. Slowly, our family stopped feeling broken. After almost 18 months of rehabilitation, I was medically retired. Surrendering my military ID hurt more than expected. The Army had defined me since I was 22, and I had to discover Emma Carter without a uniform. A former commander refused to let me disappear. Colonel Diane Foster called me one afternoon. "I hear you've been sitting at home too long." "I have a 4-year-old. So do half the people at the Pentagon." I laughed. "I can't relocate. I didn't ask you to." She offered me a civilian job with a Department of Defense logistics contractor in Raleigh. There were no deployments, command, or rank, but I could use what 20 years in uniform had taught me and still be home with Noah every evening. I accepted. Money stayed tight. I sold my SUV for a reliable used sedan. Our townhouse had worn carpet, a squeaking cabinet, and a yard barely large enough for a swing set. It was not fancy, but it was ours, and it was peaceful. Daniel paid court-ordered child support, and nothing more. No birthday cards, Christmas visits, or phone calls. Months passed without Noah mentioning him. When questions came, I promised not to poison my son's heart. After his kindergarten graduation, he climbed onto the couch beside me. "Mom? Yeah, buddy? Why doesn't my dad come?" Children ask impossible questions with remarkable simplicity. I turned off the television. "Your dad made different choices. Did he not love me?" The question hurt more than any explosion. I pulled him close. "Listen to me. There is nothing wrong with you." He looked up. "Then why? Sometimes grown-ups make selfish decisions." "Is he a bad man?" I thought carefully. "No, he made bad choices." There was a difference, and I hoped Noah would understand it one day. Noah grew into the child every parent hopes to raise. He held doors, thanked waitresses, and carried groceries for elderly neighbors without being asked. Every Veterans Day, he placed flowers at the local memorial because he wanted to. Fascinated by military history, he devoured World War II books, read about Medal of Honor recipients, and watched documentaries with his grandfather. One Saturday morning, he looked across the breakfast table at me. "Mom, what is it? Were you scared?" "Where? When you were deployed?" I smiled. "Every day." His eyes widened. "Really? Being brave doesn't mean you aren't scared." "Then what does it mean?" "It means doing the right thing anyway." He nodded, and I could almost see the lesson settle into his heart. Daniel's social media life looked perfect. Expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, a beautiful Charlotte house, his wife, and expensive cars. Friends sometimes mentioned it, but I had stopped caring until one afternoon changed everything. It happened during Noah's 4th grade award ceremony. After the program, his teacher pulled me aside. "Mrs. Carter, I wanted you to know Noah has been nominated." "For what?" "The Carolina Junior Leadership Academy." I had never heard of it. She explained that the highly selective program offered leadership training, community service, scholarships, and mentorship from retired military officers and civic leaders. Only a handful of students entered each year. Noah worked tirelessly on the application. Months later, he burst through the front door, waving the acceptance letter. I got in. I hugged him so tightly that he laughed. I knew you could. Neither of us knew someone else had noticed. Exactly 3 weeks later, a certified envelope arrived from a law office. The first line made my stomach drop. Petition for full custody. Daniel was not asking to visit. He wanted the court to take Noah from me. As I read, I understood this was not fatherhood. It was about winning. I read the page 10 times. He wanted sole legal and physical custody, not visitation or shared parenting. I stood frozen while the kettle whistled. Noah entered with his backpack. Mom? I folded the papers quickly. Everything okay? I forced a smile. Just work. He went upstairs. I waited for his door to close before crying. Not because I believed Daniel deserved to win, but because after 9 silent years, he suddenly believed he deserved to be called a father. The next morning, I met Linda Brooks, a family lawyer recommended by another veteran. Her modest Raleigh office held legal books and family photographs. After nearly 30 years in family law, she read Daniel's petition in silence, then sighed. This isn't really about custody, I figured. He waited almost a decade. He barely used the visitation rights he already had. I know. She tapped one paragraph with her pen. Here is the real reason. The petition used my physical limits and alleged military-related emotional instability to argue that Noah would have greater opportunities and a more stable home with Daniel. I laughed at the absurdity. A stable home. Linda nodded. We are going to need documentation. I have medical records. We will need more than that. I've completed every VA evaluation they ever required. Good. I've worked full-time for 7 years. Excellent. My son's teachers know me. We will call them. She leaned forward. Emma, have you ever hidden anything from the court? No. Have you ever lied about your medical condition? Never. She smiled. Then don't start worrying now. I wanted to believe her, but truth does not always win quickly. Sometimes it has to fight. For weeks, we gathered school attendance, medical evaluations, employment records, volunteer certificates, neighbor statements, and letters from teachers. Together, they showed a stable home, a healthy child, and an involved mother. Daniel's attorney tried to turn my service into a liability. During the deposition, his questions grew insulting. Mrs. Carter, do loud noises still startle you? Sometimes. Do you experience nightmares? Occasionally. So you admit your combat experiences still affect your daily life? They affect my memories. Isn't that the same thing? No. I remember my deployment. I remember losing friends. I remember being wounded. But I have never neglected my son. He changed direction. You still walk with a limp. Yes. Can you run? No. What if Noah were in danger? I held his gaze. My body would hurt afterward, but I would still get to him first. He paused for nearly a minute. Outside, Linda smiled. You handled that beautifully. I've testified before military review boards. I could tell. Daniel did not act like a father desperate to reconnect. He acted like a businessman pursuing an investment. The explanation came one Saturday while Noah was at soccer. Michael arrived with coffee and a serious expression. I think I know what is going on. What? I met an old coworker who works for Daniel. Apparently Daniel has been bragging. About what? About his son being accepted into the Carolina Junior Leadership Academy. I frowned. He never even congratulated Noah. Michael nodded. He tells people his son is headed for military academy recommendations and scholarships. It all clicked. The academy, scholarships, and prestige. Daniel did not want to raise Noah. He wanted to claim him, display him, and rewrite history. The truth hurt less than expected because it proved he had not changed. The trial began in early spring. Military hearings had taught me to remain calm, but family court was different. This was not my career. This was my child. Daniel wore a tailored Navy suit, expensive watch, and perfect haircut. His wife sat behind him in pearls. They looked like suburban success. I carried one worn leather folder containing 9 years of truth. Judge Eleanor Watkins entered at 9. For nearly an hour, Daniel's lawyer described a wounded veteran with permanent limits and emotional trauma whose child needed greater stability. He repeatedly called me disabled. Each time I wrote a note. Linda did not attack. She presented work records, medical evaluations, school reports, volunteer certificates, and witnesses who all described me the same way: dependable, patient, disciplined, and present. Then Daniel took the stand. "I've always loved my son," he said confidently. Linda rose. "When was the last birthday party you attended?" Silence. "When was the last parent-teacher conference you attended?" Silence again. "What is Noah's favorite subject?" Daniel hesitated. "Science." "It is history. What size shoes does your son wear?" He had no answer. "What food is he allergic to?" Daniel looked toward his attorney. "I don't remember." Linda thanked him and returned to her seat. After reviewing the exhibits, Judge Watkins said, "I notice repeated references to Mrs. Carter's military service. Has the court received her complete military record?" Daniel's attorney answered, "No, Your Honor. I would like to see it." A clerk left through a side door and returned with a sealed military file. She placed it before Judge Watkins, who broke the seal and began reading. She reviewed my service history, promotions, evaluations, medical reports, and awards. Daniel relaxed, believing the file would only confirm my injuries and limitations. He and his lawyer had no idea what else it held. Halfway through, the judge stopped at one paragraph, read it twice, and looked at me. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Was this portion once classified?" "Yes, ma'am." "And it has since been declassified?" "Yes." She nodded. "I see." Daniel shifted. For the first time that morning, he looked uneasy. "I am going to read one sentence into the record." Everyone seemed to lean forward at the same moment. Her voice remained calm as she read. Despite sustaining multiple life-threatening injuries, Lieutenant Colonel Emma Carter repeatedly refused evacuation until every soldier and civilian under her protection had been safely evacuated. Military psychological evaluations conducted afterward unanimously concluded that her decision-making under extreme stress remained exemplary and that she demonstrated extraordinary judgment, emotional stability, and unwavering devotion to those in her care. Absolute silence followed. I closed my eyes briefly. I had not heard those words spoken aloud in years. When I opened them, Daniel was pale, his mouth slightly open. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." Judge Watkins looked directly at him. "Mr. Carter?" He did not answer. "I assume your attorney reviewed this document." His lawyer looked confused. "No, Your Honor. I was never given the complete military record." The judge raised one eyebrow. "Interesting." The attorney flipped through his copy, his expression changing page by page. He found the paragraph, read farther, then closed the file, removed his glasses, and rubbed his forehead. That quiet gesture said more than any objection. Linda leaned toward me. "I think their case just collapsed." But the hearing was not over. Judge Watkins folded her hands. "Mr. Carter, you have repeatedly argued that Mrs. Carter's military injuries made her incapable of sound parental decisions." "Yes, Your Honor." "Yet the official evaluations performed by the United States Army conclude precisely the opposite." Daniel swallowed. "I wasn't aware," the judge interrupted him. "That has become quite obvious." People shifted uncomfortably as the judge continued. "This court also has 9 years of school records, parent conferences, volunteer work, medical appointments, and teacher evaluations. I find no evidence that Mrs. Carter ever failed to put her son's needs first. I do find substantial evidence that you chose not to participate in his life for nearly 9 years. Daniel's attorney stood. "Your Honor." She raised one hand. "I am not finished." He sat down. Judge Watkins turned to Noah, seated beside the court-appointed child advocate. He looked confused, not frightened. The judge smiled gently. "Noah, do you love your mother?" He looked surprised. "More than anybody. Does she take good care of you?" "Every day." "What do you want this court to know?" Noah hesitated, then answered with a 10-year-old's honesty. "My mom never quits." The courtroom became silent again. "I hurt my leg playing baseball last year," he said. Mom carried me into the emergency room even though her leg hurt. She says soldiers don't leave people behind, and she never left me behind. Tears ran down my face. Every therapy session, lonely birthday, sleepless night, and painful day had led to that moment. Judge Watkins removed her glasses. "Thank you, Noah." When she faced Daniel again, calm disappointment filled her voice. "Mr. Carter, becoming interested in a child is not the same as becoming a parent." Daniel lowered his head, with nothing to say. After a long silence, the judge delivered her decision. Even the courtroom clock seemed loud. "Mr. Carter, this court recognizes the importance of a child having both parents in his life." Daniel straightened, and for a brief second, hope returned to his face. "But parenthood is measured by consistent love, sacrifice, responsibility, and presence, not biology alone." She faced me. "The evidence shows that Mrs. Emma Carter provided a stable, loving, secure home despite extraordinary physical challenges. Her injuries did not diminish her parenting. They appear to have strengthened her commitment to her son." I fought tears. 9 years of appointments, fevers, projects, birthdays, Christmas mornings, and hard conversations had finally been seen. The judge faced Daniel. "You voluntarily left your son's daily life for nearly a decade. You cannot disappear during the difficult years and return when the rewards become attractive." The courtroom remained perfectly still. "Therefore, the petition for sole custody is denied." Daniel closed his eyes. The judge was not finished. "Children benefit from healthy relationships when possible. If you sincerely want to enter Noah's life, the opportunity exists, but it will begin with trust, not custody." She ordered gradual visitation supervised by a family counselor. There would be no disruption, and every step would depend on Noah's comfort and well-being. When the hearing ended, people quietly collected their papers. Linda squeezed my shoulder. "You earned this." "I don't know if I did." She smiled. "You've been earning it for 9 years." Outside, spring sunlight warmed the courthouse steps. There were no reporters, only ordinary people returning to their cars after an ordinary day in court. I preferred it that way. Michael gave me his biggest hug since my deployment. "I told you." "You did." No one was taking that boy away. Noah hugged us both, and for a moment everything felt wonderfully normal. Then Daniel approached. He looked older, not from gray hair, but because something inside him had changed. His wife stayed near the entrance. For the first time in years, he looked me directly in the eyes. "I owe you an apology." I waited. "I should have been there." "Yes." "I was selfish." "Yes." "I convinced myself leaving was easier." I nodded. "It was." He looked at Noah. "I kept telling myself there would be time later." His voice cracked. 9 years disappeared. No apology could restore Noah's first steps. First game, first day of school, nightmares, or birthdays. Those moments were gone. "I can't change what I did," Daniel said quietly. "No, but I would like the chance to become a better father." I looked at Noah. He was old enough to have a voice, so I knelt beside him. "You heard everything. What do you think?" He thought carefully, then looked at his father. "You hurt my mom." Daniel closed his eyes. "I know." "You hurt me too." "I know." After a long silence, Noah said, "I don't forgive people because they deserve it. Mom taught me forgiveness is something you choose." Daniel cried the way people do when they finally stop lying to themselves. "I'd like to get to know you," Noah continued, "but slowly." Daniel nodded immediately. "As slowly as you need." That began an honest family, not a perfect one. Over the next year, Daniel showed up awkward and uncertain at times, but consistently. Counseling and rebuilding trust were hard. Trust grows more slowly than it breaks, yet father and son gradually found common ground. Daniel even volunteered with wounded veterans. One afternoon he admitted something. "When the judge read your record, I realized I'd spent years calling you broken." The truth was, I was the one who ran. I did not answer. Life had already answered for me. Today, Noah is preparing for college and still wants to serve others, in uniform or elsewhere. The choice is his. I am proud that hardship never hardened his heart. My greatest victory was not court, proving Daniel wrong, or hearing my record read aloud. It was raising a son who learned that strength is measured not by rank, medals, or revenge, but by character. Those who stay through life's hardest battles shape us more than those who leave. If you have witnessed that quiet courage in yourself or someone you love, thank you for listening. I would be honored if you shared this story, or joined me again for more stories of resilience, family, and second chances. The end.